Good evening and welcome to the MCPS Environmental Sustainability Youth Town Hall. My name is Faye. I use she/her pronouns, and I am an 11th grade student at Poolsville High School and one of the facilitators this evening. I am in the Global Ecology program at Poolsville, where I study how the external factors of our society affect the quality of life on our planet. I've also worked on stewardship projects through this program, as well as the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lumina. I use she/her pronouns, and I'm a freshman at Winston Churchill High School. I'm currently the Environmental Affairs Coordinator for the Montgomery County Regional Student Government Association, where I lead a task force to conduct different environmental activities. Last year, I was the Montgomery County Junior Council's Environmental Affairs Director. I have hosted many environmental workshops for students, as I'm very passionate about environmental education.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanarika, a 10th grade student in the Global Ecology program at Poolsville High School and another facilitator for our program tonight. I have lobbied at Congress various times for many environmental bills such as the Green New Deal, and I'm involved in organizations such as the Sunrise Movement.
Tonight. I'm a senior at Magruder High School and currently a staff intern at the Outdoor Education and Environmental Center, working along with Ms. Lori Jenkins.
Before we begin tonight's program, we wish to remind students that the SSL form will be provided to you at the end of the program. You'll be asked to reflect on the information that you have learned here and will need to be prepared to share what you have learned. This form will be a Google form, so there will be no hard copy that you will need. Again, please be patient until the end of the program.
This evening, we are hosting the MCPS Environmental Sustainability Youth Town Hall meeting. MCPS students, staff, families, and Montgomery County community members acknowledge that we are in the midst of a climate crisis. MCPS and Montgomery County are working together to make impactful changes in schools and the greater Montgomery County community.
Tonight, we will begin with an update on the MCPS Board of Education policy and some currently proposed changes. Then we will connect our student peers with the MCPS staff who lead the sustainability work in our county. They are here to share their work and address your questions.
Many of you RSVP'd to attend the Zoom webinar and submitted questions ahead of the program. We will share those questions with our panelists later tonight. Those attendees on Zoom may also submit questions using the Q&A feature. This program is being streamed on MCPS webpage and the MCPS YouTube channel and will be recorded and posted as a future resource. Thank you so much once again for joining us tonight.
All right, first we will hear from our Montgomery County student member of the Board of Education, Ms. Hannah OLeary.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little overexposed here, but it's really nice to see you all. My name is Hannah OLeary, and I'm currently serving as the student member of the Montgomery County Board of Education. Our middle and high school students may be familiar with me and some of my work. Thank you all for spending some time this evening on a school night to talk about environmental issues, specifically as they surround and regard our school system. I'm so excited that over 700 of you signed up for this webinar today and wanted to spend some time here today. I think that really goes to show how deeply our students here in Montgomery County care about environmental affairs and about sustainability. And I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on the work that we have ahead. The Board of Education, I know before my time, but also during the time I've been here, has really made sustainability a priority for the work and the vision of the school system moving forward. I'm sure you'll hear about it later tonight, but we are currently working through on the Policy Management Committee that I serve on, Policy ECA, making a broader sustainability policy for our school system and creating commitments from MCPS in terms of what we want our future to look like. And in my work on that committee, I'm really proud to have fought for for an alignment of the policy with the county's carbon emission reduction plan and the county's commitments to climate change. And I'm also really excited to have talked about making sure that our policy reflects the fact that the climate crisis isn't something that's happening 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line or in the future. It's something that's happening right now. And maybe not all of us see it in our backyards every single day, but it is affecting real people and real lives right now. And so I really hope that that's something that we keep in mind as we go through tonight's event. But thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to hear from our wonderful student hosts and wonderful attendees. And as always, if you need anything at all, I am here for you and here to help represent you. So nice to see you all.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hannah. Before we get started, we wanted to engage our audience in a quick poll. In a moment, you will see a poll pop up with a question asking why you chose to participate in the town hall meeting today. Was it because you were recommended by a teacher? Are you curious in what MCPS is doing to be more sustainable? Are you wondering how you can help MCPS become more sustainable, or are you just here for SSL hours? All right, it looks like most of you guys chose that you were here for SSL hours. It's fun to learn. It's still fun to learn while earning your SSL hours. I also see that several students are looking to see how they can help and are curious about what MCPS is doing to become more sustainable. Whatever your reason is for being here, we're still glad that you are here.
Thanks, Parita. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Lori Jenkins, the Supervisor for MCPS Outdoor Environmental Educational Programs, and Mrs. Lynn Zarate, the Director for the MCPS Division of Sustainability and Compliance in the Department of Facilities Management.
Good evening, Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Zarate. Would you kindly share with us a friendly description on what you do in your role and how it aligns with the MCPS environmental sustainability work?
Thanks, Tenerica. Hi, everyone. I am the Administrator for Environmental Literacy in the MCPS Curriculum and Instruction Office. And environmental literacy, as you know, includes knowledge of actions that will protect the environment. And guess what? Those sustainability practices that we've been talking about and we'll be talking about are good examples of those kind of actions. I also, you heard, am the administrator for the outdoor environmental education programs. Yep, think grade 6 outdoor ed. One of our goals is to help connect students to their environment in a real and fun way with the hope that they will become so connected to it, they'll care for it. Sustainability practices that become habits help take care of the environment now and in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Lori. And my name is Lynn Zarate. I am the director of a newly formed division in Montgomery County Public Schools called the Division of Sustainability and Compliance. And we are housed inside the Department of Facilities Management. So included in our division are our staff that work with students on outreach efforts. You may have heard of our CERT team. So we're very much in support of those programs at your schools. We're also in charge of purchasing energy and utility conservation efforts. And lastly, we're in charge of compliance. So things like indoor air quality, fire code compliance, integrated pest management, asbestos, lead and radon testing, and stormwater management programs. Those are all the things that our staff work on.
Thank you both so much. We understand that the Board of Education is considering some changes to the current board policy. Would you please take a moment to share an overview of these changes?
Absolutely. The original Board of Education Policy ECA was titled Energy Conservation. It was actually adopted in November of 1973, before all of you were probably born, and it was established to create energy conservation actions and practices and preserve our natural resources. It was amended and updated a couple of years, but really updates at this point are needed for this policy to incorporate elements of our new County Climate Action Plan and provide brand new approaches to how we use energy and utilities, our transportation approaches, waste, and facilities. Next slide, please. So why does the county need a climate action plan, and why does MCPS need a policy? Well, the county's climate action plan sets educational goals for Montgomery County Public Schools, as well as many new construction requirements. In addition, the plan contains more than 20 proposed actions where Montgomery County Public Schools is either a lead or a contributor to these county actions. The primary objective of both the proposed board policy and the climate action plan, which was passed by the Board of Education in January of this year, was the adoption of the climate action plan language to reduce our greenhouse gases in Montgomery County Public Schools by 80% by the year 2027 and 100% by the year 2035. There have been very high levels of student and community engagement, and the students have demanded action now and action at the local level. Next slide, please. The news is full of extreme weather events resulting from climate change around the globe and severe droughts and flooding, but our county has been impacted as well. Some of you may remember the flash flood late last year that impacted the Twinbrook apartments and resulted in a fatality. The County Climate Action Plan and the Sustainability Policy for MCPS is about making sure we're taking action at our local level. Now, you may have heard about the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that meets almost every year, usually in Europe, and they've led international events. But in the CAP, we've developed models and projected impacts for the long-term use of greenhouse gases. And so what these little calendar scenarios show, that if we adopt every single action in the County Climate Action Plan, we are still going to see increases in temperature in the county. Currently, the first graph on the left shows that right now, every year we have 4 days that are above 95 degrees every year. If we adopt all those plans by 2100, there will be significantly more number of days that are still above 95 degrees. But if we do nothing, that's where the pink scenario takes over, and we start to see much greater impacts that will impact both the students of the future, the students of today, as well as the other vulnerable people in our society. Next slide, please. So this graph shows the magnitude of the work that we need to do. When you look at 2005 as the benchmark, which is what the county set as the benchmark, you see that we've been able to make some greenhouse reductions over the years. In 2018, you can see where the level we were at. And just to pause for a moment and talk about greenhouse gases. If you recall from your science classes, greenhouse gases are gases in our atmosphere that absorb heat and reflect it back to the earth and result in warming. So some of these gases are naturally occurring, but others have had their concentrations increased by human activity. In Montgomery County, the two biggest contributors to greenhouse gases are building energy use and transportation. So our work in the next couple of years is going to be able to reduce that concentration of the greenhouse gases dramatically. If you look at where we got to be in 2027 at that 80%, it's a big drop from 2018. So it's going to take everybody working together to solve these problems. Next slide, please. One of the biggest investments Montgomery County Public Schools has made to our schools or our built environment is to make our learning spaces where our students go to learn safe, healthy, resilient, and sustainable. It's our goal that we operate these facilities and contribute to the well-being of our community and the health of the planet. The next few slides will review our accomplishments to date, and then we'll talk about more about what we need to do moving forward. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the highlights of our sustainability over the years. Both Smith Jenkins' office and my office are considered green centers for the state. And as of today, when we celebrate World Water Day, we're meeting with you guys to hear more about what MCPS is doing and what students can do. A frequent question we hear from students as they register and talk to us is, what can you do to help? Well, if you notice on this slide, you'll see that 90 of our schools are green schools. But I have a question for you today. Of those 90 schools, there's only 13 middle schools and 8 high schools. So if you're asking yourself right now, is my school a green school? Then the answer might be no. And both Ms. Jenkins' staff and my staff are ready to help you receive the certification. Several schools have done this where students have led the initiative and students have carried on the initiative. So this is some great way for you to become involved. Next slide. Currently, all of our schools have sustainability programs in them. One of the questions students ask is how can they be involved to take care of the environment and remove and reduce their carbon footprint during their daily activities. So we've already talked in the past slide about joining the green team, which is the picture that you see on the left. The next slide talks about reducing, reusing, recycling, and rethinking waste. So I'm sure all of you know by now that in addition to bottles and papers and cans, MCPS is required to recycle those by the county. But we also recycle motor oil and leaves and 20 other different types of materials. So you can visit our website for details on those different types of materials that can be collected for recycling. In addition, we started some brand new programs this year. Some examples are recycling single-use alkaline batteries, markers and pens, and glue sticks and bottles. But we added that word rethink this year because in light of the pandemic, many of our county residents experience hunger and food insecurity. Hunger is a problem that we can solve. It's about redistributing the food. Students and staff this year have launched initiatives to have share tables at their schools and make sure that any leftover food lands up in the students' stomachs, not in trash or compost bins. In these share tables, the food is shared first within the school, then with after-school programs, and sometimes it's transported outside of the school for future sharing, such as a counselor office or a school pantry. And a last resort, several schools are partnering with community nonprofits to share the food that's near expiration dates. In addition, a few other schools have launched some composting programs as a pilot program across the county. The third element that all of our schools have is energy management system, and that's shown by the graphic on the right. Basically, these are computerized controls that enable central scheduling for the air conditioning and the heating so that we can turn things off in the middle of the night and not waste energy. Next slide, please. In 2007, MCPS constructed our first public lead school in the state of Maryland. That was Great Seneca Creek Elementary. All the schools that are now constructed have been constructed to this standard. And beginning this year, we're transitioning to an even better standard called the Green Globe Standard. The graphics on this picture show some of the elements of sustainability that we've incorporated as we've either built schools, renovated schools, or even done work on the grounds. You'll see that we have 38 schools with green roofs, 83 schools that have bioretention structures that treat the stormwater and help manage and protect the Chesapeake Bay. Currently, we have 17 schools that have solar energy potential on them. And we are actually working on an additional 8 schools that will be added over the next couple of years. And we have 32 schools that utilize geothermal. Next slide, please.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Arate. We're there. All right, so we're going to talk about teaching and learning and climate change. And one of the greatest partnerships we've had with the new Division of Sustainability and Compliance is that we are working together, the built part of the environment and the curriculum part of the environment. So we're very, the school environment. So we're very excited about that. Let's think of environmental literacy for a few minutes as a giant umbrella that encompasses the interaction between people and the environment and includes culture and economics. So you can see it's very broad. Climate change education is a huge item underneath that umbrella. We are fortunate to be in a state, hold on 1 second, please. Thank you. Okay. We are fortunate to be in a state that takes the environment very seriously. In fact, in 2010, Maryland became the first state in the nation to create pre-K through 12 state standards for learning and a graduation requirement in environmental literacy. Those standards shape our environmental education right here in MCPS and around the state. Now a little background for us on the Climate Action Plan. 3 years ago, Montgomery County government initiated meetings to create this aggressive climate action plan that Ms. Arate and I are talking about. Several of us in MCPS were requested to participate, and we jumped at the chance to make a difference in our county and do it fast. My role was to help form the climate education actions that you're about to see. In our preliminary meetings with stakeholders, we received feedback that students and parents were concerned that there was very little climate change in MCPS that they could identify. The following actions in the CAP are intended to address those concerns. Next, please. Okay, so I talk in threes here. We got three points up there, all right? This is a three-pronged attack to make sure that we are shining a light hugely on what we do in MCPS and where we're going, right? So first was to elevate and identify climate change education where it is in the curriculum for students, teachers, and parents. A good example of why this is necessary is helping everyone understand that K through 5 students need the foundational knowledge of weather, climate, biodiversity, food chains, food webs, what is culture, etc., before they can move to the complex interactions that you guys are doing in secondary school on climate change impact. Thus, when grade 2 students learn the difference between weather and climate, they are, in fact, learning climate change educations. We just have to make certain that people understand that piece. Next, we are analyzing the curriculum for places where additional climate change content is needed and creating it, right? Environmental justice came to our minds immediately because that's an area where we are seeing that we need more work. Then, or simultaneously, we are creating opportunities for students to learn more about green careers through integration into the curriculum, but also through internships and those great career technology education programs and pathways that we have at the high school level. Next, please. Okay, the actions on this slide, as you can imagine, are near and dear to my role as supervisor of outdoor ed programs. Using the outdoors as a classroom is one that we continue to build into the curriculum at all levels. One way we do that is through encouraging educators to integrate gardens in their instruction. But if any one of you has spent any time creating and maintaining a garden, you know how much time and work is involved. Assistance to make that happen is needed. Another way that the state of Maryland and MCPS has fostered environmental learning inside and outside the classroom is through the Maryland Green School program that Ms. Arate mentioned earlier. The Maryland Green School program is a win-win-win situation. Great for kids, great for the environment, and great for the community. The program awards schools that create a green culture in their building and in their classrooms. MCPS has 90, as you saw, but guys, we have 100 more to get on board, 100 and more to get on board. This is a great place for student action, and the state of Maryland is so invested that the program it passed legislation to support the program. So the state legislature very much has its eye on this. Next, please. Okay, finally, in order to move forward as a system in adopting climate action, the Climate Action Plan, we knew that everyone needs to be involved, not just MCPS students, it's got to be all of us. So the Maryland Environmental Literacy Regulation that I talked about earlier actually says that teachers, educators, and administrators will include professional learning in climate change. That professional development includes environmental content and how to teach it. But all staff, and Ms. Arate and I've talked a lot about this, all of our staff, bus drivers, secretaries, building services, everyone needs a basic climate change 101 so everyone understands that the sustainability actions we are incorporating into our buildings and practices so they know why we're doing those things. People need to know the whys of sustainability practices to embrace those practices. That's true for all of us. Example, no idle zones, which you know what they're supposed to do. And of course, it's to reduce greenhouse gases. Another example of a new sustainability action involves winter de-icing. Over to you, Ms. Sarate.
Next slide, please. So one of the examples of the deep change we need to make across our organization is how we treat our facilities for snow and ice. And this crosses boundaries across operations and education, just like the draft policy has forged partnership between facilities and education curriculum offices. The reason for this initiative is that the salt doesn't go away when the snow and ice melt. It seeps into the ground and into wells, and it travels with the stormwater into the streams and the drinking waters and corrodes pipes. It only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to permanently pollute 5 gallons of water to a level that's toxic to our freshwater ecosystems. Once the salt is in the water, it does not dissipate and cannot be easily removed from the water. It's already begun to impact our local wildlife, and it also has caused very high cost increases for dialysis centers because they must remove the salt for the water before they can treat the patients. So the next slide, Ms. Jenkins is going to talk about how we've got this operations piece, but we've also got the curriculum piece where we're tying it back together.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so the de-icing is also a target of our new biology unit in high school. where students study the effect of de-icing as an example of a human activity that has a negative impact on the ecosystem, which we were just talking about. From there, students work on mitigation plans for de-icing or to address another local environmental issue. So again, this is where those two pieces are coming together, and the work that our students are doing are relevant and authentic. This is happening right now, and we're all working on solutions. Thank you. Next slide, please.
So a little bit earlier, I mentioned the fact that the board had adopted the draft policy in January, but I want to back to the beginning of the school year. In the beginning of the school year was when we began to talk to the Policy Management Committee, the Fiscal Management Committee, about the work that needed to happen around the sustainability policy. And one very important element was that we convened a stakeholder engagement group to talk about what should those priorities for the new policy be. We also held symposiums last May and April. There was a youth town hall that was hosted by both Montgomery County and Montgomery College in February of last year. So we've been really working hard to hear what the students have to say, what the staff have to say, and what the community has to say. But very interestingly, as we've held these seminars, and again, this is one of the reasons why we're talking to you tonight, because we want to hear back from you, is that we've seen loud and clear the three priorities from our stakeholders. The first one is that we need to make sure that we've increased student and staff knowledge about climate change. The second is a mandate to absolutely proceed with reducing those greenhouse gas emissions, and also to really take a look at what other waste streams exist and what we can do to reduce the waste. Lastly, we want to make sure that we've increased our resilience, that we're prepared for future heat waves and cold waves, and that we're doing our best to procure clean energy. The other three bullets that are listed on this slide are things that were very important to stakeholders throughout the conversations, but they're not necessarily things that we are going to do in terms of climate change. These are things that are important across the system. Number one, we need to make sure that we share the data. So our department has already begun work in not only with the reorganization that we had, but also taking a look at our webpage and making sure that we're providing the information that we need to. We're working on adopting some new software to be able to have schools have data at their local level so that they can see what their local impacts are and they can actually make changes to their operations. Secondly, we need to make sure this is deployed equitably across the school system. I talked a little bit earlier about new construction and the great work that we can do with new construction. But, about a year ago, I was talking with a principal and she said, well, it's great the work that you're doing with the new schools, but what about the existing schools? What can I do for my school that's an older school? And that's a really, really important question, because as we had these conversations with our stakeholders, one of the things that came through loud and clear was that we wanted to make sure every single student and every single staff member and every single school knew what they could do to help influence sustainability towards the future, they personally could do, but also what did MCPS invest in their school? So we are launching several programs at current buildings, and these include, like I mentioned earlier, expanding solar and looking at EV charging stations. We're working on that. We should have some news on that in a couple of months. We're looking at ingress and grade audits at all of our existing buildings. So we're looking at the buildings that are using a lot of energy and seeing what infrastructure improvements we can make to have those buildings consume less energy. So that is one big thing for the existing buildings. And so even this summer, we are starting some projects where we're going to be going into the schools and begin to change out some of the light bulbs to LED light bulbs that consume much less energy. So we are looking at all the schools, not just focusing in on the existing schools and the new schools, because it's very important. We know that some of the older schools do consume more energy than the brand new schools because we're constructing those to very strict standards. And last but not least, like I mentioned, it's very important that we engage and empower all staff and all students across the board. We need to meet students where they are. We need to consider the things that are important to them and incorporate that into the work that we do moving forward. One of the conversations we had in our stakeholder meetings was, well, okay, it's great that we're getting electric buses, but what about the kids that walk to school? Those kids may not see the impact of that. So what impact will they realize that MCPS is doing? Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit more about buses later on, but what does the greenhouse gas really mean for Montgomery County Public Schools? What does this reduction mean? What's it going to impact you guys every day? We're going to be working on increasing our use of technology to make sure that we're reducing our consumption of all types of energy. We're going to continue to enhance our behavior-based sustainability programs. we want to look at not only the bus fleet, but also the rest of our fleet and see what we can do to replace them with electric vehicles at the time that they become out of service. Unfortunately, our budgets right now, we tend to drive most of our fleet vehicles for at least 20 years. And so as we replace new vehicles, we're looking at more energy efficient vehicles. Obviously, we're continuing to design our buildings to increase sustainability and resiliency. We want to improve our existing infrastructure that we already talked about. Purchasing and procurement, we're going to be looking at how do we buy things? What can we do better to make our world much more sustainable? How can we change our practices and really go deep into those changes? And last but not least, and I think some of you probably experienced this, co-locating schools with other governmental facilities. What that really means is, are there opportunities where we can have a public facility right next to a school? So for example, sometimes we have school-based health centers as part of a wing of a school, or we have daycares in schools, so that we're looking at what we can do to reduce the greenhouse gases related to transportation by co-locating the construction of these facilities. Next slide, please.
All right. Thank you both to Ms. Lynn Zarate and Ms. Lori Jenkins. So students have a lot of opinions on this policy and this work. So how can students share their thoughts on the new policy changes?
So you can see the QR code on the screen that's up there right now for you to scan with your phones if you like. That will take you directly to the policy comment page. And we really want everybody to participate and to give us some comments if you're available to do that. We want to hear the good and the bad. We want to hear what's important to you, because we're writing this for the students and staff of MCPS. We're going to need everybody's engagement to make this a great success. And I think Lumina is going to talk us through how to do public comment, because I think one of the great things about this is once you guys learn how to do public comment for this policy, you'll be able to make public comment on any of the policies that the board is considering. Next slide.
Yep. Thank you both so much. So we will be sharing how you can write and submit your own public comments. But firstly, we would really like to emphasize that this public comment is completely free form. You can make it as long as you like. It definitely doesn't have to be other paragraph essay. One thing I would like to point out is when you write your public comment, you can refer to certain line numbers in the policy to make your response more specific.
So taking a look at the slide that shows 3 easy steps to submitting your public comments, the first step will be to log into public comment webpage for Board Policy ECA Energy Conservation. The direct link to this has been placed in the chat. Second, step 2 will be to enter your first and last name, email address, and then identify yourself as an MCPS student. And then finally, you will be sharing your comments with the members of the Board in Education. Remember that this will be reviewed by every board member and it will be public. So please write something that is meaningful and something that you would be proud to have your name associated with. This is so easy to do, and MCPS would love and appreciate your feedback.
Thank you so much, Tanrika. Right now, we want to do another poll with you all. So another poll question is going to pop up on your screen. And so we want to ask, what part of the MCPS sustainability work was new to you? Select all that apply, and the keyword is new. So choice A is we have 37 LEED certified schools. B, we use solar energy. C, we have green roofs. D, we use geothermal systems. E, we use bioretention. F, we are electrifying the school bus fleet. G, we recycle more than 20 different types of materials. Or H, we have 91 male green schools. Thank you all so much for participating. So let's take a look at your responses. Okay, so I see most people chose, we have 37 LEED certified schools, and a lot of people also chose, we have 91 Mayo Green schools. Thank you so much for participating. I definitely agree with everyone. All right, so let's think about this a little bit differently for one more poll question. So poll question number 3 is, what is your priority in addressing climate change in MCPS? Please select one as you see your poll question pop up on your screen. All right, so we have a few choices here. A is greenhouse gas emission reduction. B is increasing clean energy and conservation. C is increasing staff and student knowledge of climate change and increasing resiliency through the curriculum and professional development. Or D, increasing outdoor ed learning through school gardens and outdoor classrooms.
All right, thank you for answering. And so it looks like most of you chose B, which was increasing clean energy and conservation.
Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that last poll question. Our last segment for tonight will be probably the most important. Many of you RSVP'd to attend this Zoom webinar and submitted questions ahead of time for this program.
We will share those questions with our panelists tonight. The attendees on Zoom may also submit additional questions using the Q&A feature, but please be patient as we will do our best to get to them.
Our MCPS staff are here to address the questions you have all shared. As you can see on the slide, we have representatives from across the operations of Montgomery County Public Schools to answer the questions that you have been asked.
Joining Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Ate, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Seth Adams, MCPS Director for the Department of Facilities Management, Mr. Les Douglas, MCPS Acting Director for Transportation, and Mr. Sean Shako, MCPS Supervisor of Food Services for the Division of Food and Nutritional Services. Welcome.
Thank you so much for our panelists for being here tonight. Our first question will go to Mr. Sako on future operation plans. How is MCPS exploring using less packaged foods as well as cooking within our school cafeterias?
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for having me. At DFNS, which is also known as the Division of Food and Nutrition Services, sometimes I like to use that word because it's a little bit shorter. We're committed in providing quality meals to our students, which is why we invest so many resources in perfecting our centralized production facility, which is known as our CPF. It's a little known fact that most of our meals are actually, for our elementary schools, are actually produced out of the CPF. To date, this school year, we've produced over 3 million meals just out of that facility alone. And so everything happens at that facility where all of the raw ingredients get sent in, they get cooked, they get packaged, and then they get shipped to our facilities for our elementary schools. For our secondary schools, they do all of the cooking on their sites themselves. We also prepare our homemade soups, sauces, and dressings out of the CPF for almost every single MCPS school. While we continuously invest resources in the CPF, we're also aware that our use of prepackaged items are a little bit higher than what we would like to have. 2 years ago, when COVID first hit us in Montgomery County, we shifted our operations overnight. We went from closing our school doors on Friday to operating our emergency feeding programs that following Monday. We had no idea how COVID spread. All we knew is that we had to feed our families. The most practical solution was to utilize individually sealed items in case the disease spread via contact. As we've progressed from those days, we've learned a lot. And as we return to our new normal, our goal is to incorporate new and revitalize previous exciting initiatives that we're implementing prior to COVID.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sacco. That was really interesting. Our next question is for Mr. Douglas. So when will the transition to electric vehicles be fully complete?
Very good question. We began this year with 24 electric buses at at one of our lots, and they're at the Bethesda Depot, and they're currently testing with students on board for those 24 vehicles. So they are being used on a daily basis, and they are transporting students. We're testing not only for the character of how the buses run, but how effective the logistical preparations for those buses are. As you saw the picture a while ago, all of the charging stations with those big white columns of charging stations. Well, we need to make sure that all of that technology works correctly before we expand the plan. The next group of buses is going to be 61 buses that are supposed to be delivered this summer. Now, the one caveat there is there are supply chain issues with manufacturing anything. So we hope those buses, those additional 61, will be coming in for the beginning of next year. But in one sense, we almost cross our fingers because we'll be happy when they're here. With each increase in the number of buses, the nature of the infrastructure changes fundamentally. It's not just a linear equation. You double the size of the buses, you double the infrastructure. It's actually a change in the nature of the infrastructure as you increase the number of buses. So in order to ensure success, as each step of the process, we constantly assess the nature and availability of the infrastructure needed for the next increase to be successful. This is really just a short way of saying it wouldn't be wise to assume a rollout schedule too far in advance. It wouldn't be wise for me to say right now, well, by the beginning of next year, we'll have 84 buses. By the beginning of the following year, we'll have 200. We have to take this in steps and test the infrastructure, test the robust nature of the infrastructure, and make changes as we go along. I can say that the Department of Transportation is working at a deliberate but concentrated pace and is pleased with the progress that's being made. Now, at this point, as you can see, there's a gentleman over my right shoulder. His name is Mr. Jim Beasley. He is the head of the Bethesda Depot, and he is spearheading the electric bus initiative in Montgomery County. And I just want everyone to see Mr. Beasley because he is the champion of the electric buses in Montgomery County.
Good evening, all.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. This is great to hear. Our next question will be to Ms. Jenkins. Will MCPS be taking steps to prepare students for a greener economy?
Great question. Thank you, Tenerica. The green economy, as we all know, is vast and it's growing. It encompasses everything from studying insect behavior to developing alternative fuels to building green roofs. It's just huge, right? Just huge. We in the curriculum office continue to look for opportunities to integrate green careers into classroom instruction at the right time, not just having like, okay, we're going to have a day for green careers, right? Rather integrate it into the curriculum as we're teaching. And examples in high school biology, where we're doing that unit that I was talking about with salt and looking at biodiversity and the impact of humans on it. And we have a National Park Service video that was created right here in DC by us, and MCPS TV did an amazing job, where various national park staff talk about their jobs. One of them is a scientist, one of them is running everything that has to do with the facility at national parks, and then the director of the national parks. And they talk about their education, previous education, and their experiences. So that's the kind of work that we'd like to continue doing. We have one like that in grade 6 as well. We also have a very robust group of career technology pathways that integrate green jobs and skills. Examples include horticulture, agricultural science, but also construction and auto trades. Please remember, all job sectors are becoming more green now, so it's really embedded in all the places where the changes are occurring. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. So this next question is for you again. And how can students be involved at the county level to help further develop climate education?
All right, I love this question, so thank you very much. Okay, it's the first time I've ever seen it in writing, so that was great. Okay, first step would be to talk to a teacher who can connect you to a specialist or a supervisor in the curriculum office. I'd be included in that, right, for the subject you are interested in. So since environmental includes science, social studies, English, math, everything, you can also check in the website, besides talking to a teacher that you really like and you have a connection with, about who is their supervisor for curriculum. Then I would suggest an introductory email to that person explaining your interest, and I know those people will take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our next question goes to Mr. Adams. Why don't all new construction have solar panels, renewable energy, geothermal, or green roofs? And does microhydro sound like a plausible path to take? Is the environment being prioritized?
Great questions, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to hopefully answer some questions for everyone. So first, I would say absolutely the environment is prioritized with everything we do in the Department of Facilities Management. You talked about a little bit about new construction. There's quite a bit that you added in there in terms of what do we include, but pretty much we either include it or we have it ready to go to be retrofitted if need be. Solar panels are one of the items that every one of our schools, every one of our new schools is built to be able to handle solar panels. So historically, we've been working with partners to engage private companies to come in and install them either directly right after the fact or shortly thereafter. But we will be moving in the future to hopefully installing some and owning some of our own. So that'll be a different change for us. But one, again, as we heard in this presentation, we have to be very aggressive in what we do, to be able to meet the goals that are set forth. The question about micro hydro, micro hydro is, as well as any of the other micro energy production technologies, is absolutely something we're pursuing. We're looking at it on small scales. I think this is an opportunity that we can partner with the curriculum office, see where there are sites that we could possibly do some pilot installations, work with students to incorporate that and that to become part of the curriculum and part of your student experience, as well as produce energy along the way. So, those are all, both the low-hanging fruit, but also the larger elements of the facilities that we are pursuing. But absolutely is prioritized and will be prioritized moving forward. But great questions. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you. Our next question is for Mr. Douglas. Should we expect any changes in transportation as MCPS aims to reduce greenhouse gases?
Yes, I'd like to have Mr. Beasley answer this question.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this. I appreciate the invitation. Yes, the buses are new to us, and as we learn about them, and it's a constant learning experience every day, We noticed right from the start that there's no internal combustion, so there's no greenhouse gas emissions. The buses are total electric. The only fluids on the bus are power steering, brake fluid, and windshield washer. So as far as polluting from dropping fluids on the ground, it's limited there. The drivers are very excited about them, the ones that are piloting the buses. As they drive the routes, they're learning a different driving technique so that they can maximize the charge on the battery and save the charge. One of the things that they have to do is manage the charge to get the most life out of the bus. So as far as greenhouse gases, yes, it's immediate elimination of greenhouse gases compared to a diesel bus. We're very excited in doing this, and in running the routes, we're trying to optimize the routes that we run so we can conserve the electricity that the bus needs to run for a day, and every day it's a new adventure. Cold weather puts new demands on the bus, warm weather benefits us a little bit. So it's a learning experience, and yes, there is a greenhouse gas reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
Thank you for your answer. I personally am very excited to hear how quiet the buses are. And this next question is for Mr. Adams. How has MCPS worked to ensure environmental sustainability is guaranteed in our schools? And how much money has MCPS put towards this budget?
Again, great questions. And you know, the money aspect of this is always important when you're thinking about implementation. One thing I would just say, you know, for all that maybe don't know this, but MCPS relies on funding from both the county and the state. You know, we actually, what we call is we're not a funding body, so we can't set our own budgets. We can ask for money, but we have to rely on those two entities to fund us. So we have been very lucky to have very supportive, politicians and delegates and county council members that support us. There's been very strong support at the state to fund different initiatives when it comes to sustainability and different initiatives that many of the students that I saw in the polls find very important. But what I would say is we have a close to a $1.8 billion budget to work on our infrastructure, to build new schools, to replace schools, to add additions, and we are increasingly dedicating more and more money towards sustainable features. So and towards our sustainable goals. So some of the previous work we may not be able to build as many additions, but the additions that we will build will be meeting the goals and intent of the energy and climate change reduction goals. So we've also dedicated specific program dollars for different initiatives. We're hopeful that we're funded in these areas because we have a lot of ideas that we want to partner with schools and partner with students to try different pilot options and see how we can move the needle and be as aggressive as we can. Even thinking about solar farms and other aspects that historically have not been supported in the county. We're hoping to bring that back and have the funding to be able to do that and start to produce energy much broader than even we can at our local schools. So we're excited about it. We feel that the budget is there to do this work. So it's all about partnerships and it's all about will. And we're very thankful that there's over 200, almost 300 students on here supporting this initiative. So looking forward to next steps. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Adams. Our next question is from Ms. Jenkins. And how will MCPS incorporate environmental education into subjects that aren't related to science?
Thank you so much for that question. All right, so environmental literacy, as I said before, is the interaction of people, the environment, culture, and economics. So as you can see immediately, it crosses all content areas, right? We got social studies in there, we have math in there with economics, we have our science. So everybody is in there, certainly ELA and those pieces. And for teachers particularly and administrators, we have that regulation from the state that says that all of us need to be up or to take professional learning on environmental literacy, and of course, right now, very much on climate change. So that's what's going on already. So that is happening for sure. But then in MCPS ourselves, I am working with the other supervisors, curriculum supervisors, to find opportunities for integrating more additional environmental teaching and learning into all of those subjects that we were just talking about. But it really does take us coming together to talk to each other about different ways we can do that. The science and social studies are the heart of a lot of what's happening, right? But everybody else has a piece of that as well. And that's what we've been doing in these meetings. Now, thanks for the question.
Thank you for answering. So our next question goes to Mr. Sacco. Food miles are a major contributor to the release of greenhouse gases. As MCPS is focusing on reducing our own greenhouse gas emissions, how will the sustainability policy address ways to improve food in our cafeteria that will benefit the environment, such as using more local products?
Awesome questions across the board. So I want to say, at DFNS, we're aware that buying local is not only beneficial for the environment, but it's also beneficial for the community. Whenever you buy anything local, the money that you actually buy stays in that community, or it's more likely to stay in that community. So it helps businesses, invest back into their communities. It also helps businesses hire locally, or hire and source locally too. It's this belief in community why DFNS make sure that we partners with as many of our local businesses that we can. One of our most reliable local partners is actually called Hadley Farms. They produce all of our breakfast grains, so all of our breakfast grain favorites. So they're actually out of their bakery that's about a 50-mile drive from our current facility in Gaithersburg. So it's not that large of a commute, and it actually is still in Maryland. So we're able to take the funds that we get from Maryland and actually reinvest it into Maryland too. Another one of our local bakeries that we utilize is called H&S Bakery, and that's about 40 miles away from our facility in Gaithersburg. They're actually out in Baltimore. So again, another Maryland company that we're able to, again, reinvest into the Maryland. But we also place a continuous priority on sourcing local and building that sense of community. As we move forward and we progress through COVID, we want to make sure that we invest as much as we can locally. So we're continuously looking to see what items that we can continuously invest into our local communities too. And whether it's through local farms, whether it's through local bakeries, whether it's through local producers of any kind of other meats or anything like that too. So we're excited that as we're progressing, that we're going to continually have that emphasis and focus with that too. Thank you again.
That's amazing. Thank you. Our next question goes to Mr. Douglas. So where is MCPS in the process of obtaining electric buses and obtaining a school bus tracking app?
Okay, we're, as I mentioned before, we currently have 24 buses in the Bethesda yard. We're going to be getting 61 more. Well, there's a 25th bus that's that we own but is not there yet. We'll also be getting 61 more buses, hopefully by the beginning of next school year. We will incorporate those into the fleet as soon as we can. And at that point, then we make an assessment of how successful we are with maintaining the logistical support for those buses. And there are two additional groups of buses that should bring us up to 400 buses at some point soon. Mr. Beasley, correct me, but I don't think we have plans for, we want to grow the fleet more than that, but at this point, that's as far out as we've planned. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. So that's the plan for the growth of the buses. The Where's My Student app, there's some technology that's coming in with the electric buses right now. It's called Zonar, and it has the capability of acting like a Where's My Student app. Again, for those things to be successful, they need to be coordinated with student data systems, They need to be coordinated with geographic information system programs. And as that technology comes in, we're going to be working on trying to work through the bugs. And as soon as we feel like it's going to be more of a service as opposed to a frustration, we are certainly going to put it out in front of students. So that's where we are now. I know I'm not being very specific about next September or next January or whatever, but a lot of these things you have to wait until your coordination between programs works well. And then we're just as eager as the students are to get those things out in your hands. Hopefully I answered the question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. We're definitely looking forward to seeing how everything works out. Our next question is going to be to Mr. Adams. What happens if some of the sustainability initiatives cost more than what we expected? And what would happen if that was to be the case?
Great question. And this was actually a topic at our board discussion. Really understanding, what it means to prioritize climate change initiatives, what it means to prioritize sustainability policy, and what it means is sometimes making very tough choices. I was looking through the Q&A and there's some great questions around, how do I get involved to make my school greener? How do I get involved as a senior after I graduate to ensure MCPS, is doing what they're saying they're doing? And really what it boils down to is getting involved. It boils down to making sure that the voice is heard, that again, making that tough decision to do something that is in the benefit of the climate change may be more important than building an addition, or maybe more important than doing something that we're accustomed to or what we're used to. So I think it's gonna take a lot of tough decisions, but those tough decisions also need the support. So when you think about boards of ed, you think about other elected bodies, they need to hear from us all that these things are important, and that may not make everyone happy, but to do the right thing when it comes to climate impact is where we need to be. I think back on we tried probably 10 years ago to put ground mount solar, a large solar farm in the ag reserve of the county. And it was rejected. It was pushed back from neighboring residents. And those are the types of things that we're at that point where, again, we have to come out and say, this is important. This is the benefit that this will provide. It may look different, it may feel different, but it's something that we have to do. So great question, but for us, it's again, highlighting the importance and bringing to the table that this is the priority, and sometimes we're going to have to make difficult decisions and go with things, go without things that we're accustomed to. So hopefully we don't end up in a situation where we can't afford things, but realistically we will, and that's what's going to have to happen.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Adams. It's important to know that there's initiative being taken behind the scenes. So our next question is for Ms. Jenkins and/or Ms. Zarate. Is MCPS planning on creating sustainability training for staff as well?
Thank you for the question. I'll start with the educators. I did mention that before, so just to highlight that quickly, we are working on plans to strengthen the base of all educators in climate change, actually also as part of that environmental literacy graduation requirement and the standards. And then we are also working so that teachers can connect and have time to connect that learning to their grade or their subject level curriculum.
And from a central supporting staff perspective, training is one of the subjects that came up early and often in our various discussions with stakeholders. One of the important principles in the policy is that everyone must be engaged for it to be successful, but we'll also need everyone to know how they fit in and what their roles and responsibilities are. And we will honestly all have to stretch and grow in new ways to adapt. So as we add new technologies to the schools, it will be very important to make sure that the staff that are operating those technologies have the training to be able to run them and run them as efficiently as possible. So yes, everyone's going to need training.
Thank you both, Mr. Rate and Ms. Jenkins. Our next question is again for you, Mr. Rate. What direct and specific actions are being taken to lower greenhouse gases to make our schools more environmentally sustainable as the climate crisis continues?
So as we already talked about, as part of the Climate Action Plan, there will be increasingly sustainable construction design requirements for the new schools that we construct, and we'll have to implement that as we build them. In our draft sustainability policy, we have a stated goal of reducing our modeled energy intensity use in the design of the schools. We are also looking at the energy use intensity for our existing schools and targeting those for retrofits. One of the tasks that we hope to complete in the next year is also sharing the green features of all of our buildings. We've done a great job in using our buildings as examples of sustainability components that can be used, but we haven't done a great job about using our buildings as teaching tools and making sure that everyone in the buildings knows everything that's there. For other existing schools, we have projects launching this summer to swap out the lighting, as I already mentioned, and we'll continue to expand the solar as we've been talking about, conducting audits of our facilities and retrofitting them to be able to reduce our energy consumption and therefore our greenhouse gas consumption.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rate. This is great to hear. Our next question is actually for you once again. Will composting programs at schools be implemented?
So as I talked about when we were talking about reducing and rethinking, the first step to waste reduction, especially in the case of food, is food recovery and making sure that the greenhouse gases that are generated when the food is grown in the agricultural world, as well as packaged and shipped, that greenhouse gas production is not wasted and the nutrition is actually delivered to the people who are in need of the food. That's the first and most cost-effective element because it's free if we have the share tables in the school, and it's very, very easily to implement. In addition, there's some grant funding that some students have worked really, really hard to get this year, and they're working on expanding composting in the schools. And there's other grant funding available locally. But on top of that, there's actually a bill in front of the state legislature right now to be able to provide funding for all of the schools across the state to implement composting programs. So we will work with students and staff on implementing these voluntary programs moving forward.
That is great to hear. Our next question will be to Ms. Jenkins. Is MCPS planning on creating school gardens for every school? And how will these gardens play a role into instructional learning?
So gardens are a wonderful instructional tool for teaching across the subject areas, again, science, math, health, social studies. But we don't have the staff capacity within our educators for them all to first have the knowledge base, to have the materials, to have the time to build gardens. What we do is we do encourage, and we have entire processes. It's actually on the Outer Ed website if anybody wants to look at school gardens, and also the forms that need to go along with that to make sure they're going to be maintained right at the school site. But that's where we are with that, is encouraging and then making certain when we're writing curriculum that we recommend and put in suggestions for teaching outdoors using these gardens or using observations from what's already out there on the school site, right? I mean, gardens are a wonderful tool to do that, but there's also other organisms that can be observed from the outside. So that's basically the answer to that question. We have about, in our elementary schools, we probably have about 55% of them have some sort of a garden that they're teaching from, which is a good number. But again, we're still working on that piece. But thanks for the question.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. It's really important to incorporate agriculture into our education. And so this next question is for Mr. Sacco. Will MCPS be providing the option of plant-based meals to students in coming years in an effort to reduce our current carbon footprint?
Thank you so much, Faye, for that question. It actually looks like it was a popular question because it was in the chat as well. And we're actually MCPS is a little bit ahead of the curve, believe it or not. We actually work with our industry partners all the time. And what happens is something that's really, really great with the food industry. So whenever there's awareness or whenever there's any kind of demand for something, the food industry actually responds pretty quickly. We saw this with gluten-free items. Whenever gluten-free and celiac disease was made aware, there was a lot more gluten-free products that was out in the market. And now we're seeing the same thing with vegan products. We've actually been working with our manufacturer companies for quite some time, about 8 years now, in the development of certain vegan options. So one of the vegan options that we have right now is our vegan burgers and our vegan chicken nuggets. And we were one of the first districts in the United States to make sure that we actually menu both of those items. But we understand that we want to try to go beyond just having, you know, a couple of vegan items here and there. We want to make sure that we're actually putting those items on the menus and featuring them. So what we're doing is our team of chefs, as well as our team of dietitians, are actually working together as we're speaking right now to help develop new plant-based recipes with our manufacturer partners. So we have one that I'm really, really excited about. It's called we're still messing around with names. So if you guys want to give me some feedback, I am totally open for it. But it is a vegan Indian curry. So it's a yellow curry with chickpeas in it instead of the traditional chicken. And we've actually been able to make that curry base with a plant-based milk alternative too. So we're still developing these things. We are still featuring our vegan products every single day. If not vegan, then it's also a vegetarian product every single day. And what we're also working towards doing is making sure that we're able to label those things a little bit better. So about 20 of our schools actually has a pilot program right now that actually showcases our labeling programs. So that way that a student can make sure that they're going through the line and able to identify what is vegan, what is vegetarian, what is halal, what is kosher. And so that way we're allowing more transparency. And again, going back to having our team of dietitians and chefs make sure that they're developing new recipes. So that way we can be as diverse with our menu as we are with our students too, because we want to make sure that every single one of our students is able to see themselves within our recipes and our menus too.
Thank you, Mr. Sacco. It's really encouraging to hear these different items in order to include all students all over our county. And so this next question is for Ms. Zarate. And why did schools spend so much money on box lights when the Promethean boards are already fit for learning?
Thanks for that question. So we checked with our colleagues in the MCPS Office of Technology to answer this question for our students tonight. Here's their response. The box lights are the next generation of smart boards. And when they've been installed, they're either acting as replacements for old boards or being put in rooms with where there were not smart boards yet installed. These box lights are a little less expensive than the Promethean boards. They provide significantly better functionality for the teachers and are much easier for students to see from anywhere in the room. They also have a projected life of at least 10 years and a minimum maintenance life cycle. So for example, our first generation of Promethean boards needed their replacement projector bulbs after about 3 to 5 years. And each one of these bulbs cost over $500 each. The goal was to first go through the school system and install new boards so that all classrooms had them. And then eventually they'll get around to moving the new boards. This removal will start soon and go through the summer when it's least disruptive to student instruction. So in summary, the box lights are better for instructional use, a little less expensive, and have a significantly lower maintenance cost.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zarate, for such a detailed explanation. Our next question goes to Mr. Sacco. So in regards to food waste, would it be possible to allow students to just get what they are going to eat instead of forcing to get food that they will just throw away? This student is asking because the student has noticed that at school, a lot of food gets wasted or thrown away because students are forced to get food that they have no intention in eating.
Thank you again for that question. It looks like it's a popular question because that was also dropped into the question and answer. So I'm glad I'm able to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. First, I want to explain a little bit about our specifics when it comes to the meal patterns and making sure that we're able to feed all the students that we need what we need to be feeding them. But I also want to mention, food waste is something that we really hate to see. Food waste not only impacts our environment, but it also impacts our budget. And I think it actually impacts the staff of the cafeterias that actually put so much effort and so much time in producing those foods. So we never want to see us feeding the trash can. We want to make sure that we see us feeding the students too. So we're going to approach this in a couple different ways. So one, I know Ms. Zarate has already talked about a little bit about share tables. So that's one way that we are doing it. Another way is our operational model. So during that COVID-19 period, during the pandemic, we actually operated in a served model. And a served model means that you get every single one of the food groups all in one bag given to you, whether you're going to be eating the food or not eating the food. And this was beneficial because, as you guys know, during the COVID-19, we weren't able to interact. So we weren't able to have you guys choose your food that you wanted. You were just handed the food. And so that way there was minimal interaction. So we would still be able to stay 6 feet away. Now, since we've transitioned to a new normal, what we're trying to do is make sure that we offer everyone the choices that they can. And what we've now implemented is something called offer versus serve. And so that means we make sure that we're offering you all of the different food groups that you want. And so the food groups are grains, proteins, vegetables, fruits, and milk. And then you can pick and choose which ones you want to have. The only caveat is we have to make sure every single one of our meals provides a vegetable or a fruit. So we still have to make sure that we're encouraging all of our students to get the fruits or the vegetables. And the fruits and vegetables are actually the most important, I personally think are the most important parts of the meal. So I want to see students make sure that they're eating as much as possible. But if, for example, you don't want the milk, you never have to take the milk for any one of the meals that you're served. If you don't want whatever grain is option for the day, if you don't want the, for example, the rice or the Tostito scoops or anything like that, you don't have to choose that either. You just have to make sure that you're choosing at least the fruits and vegetables and typically the entree as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sacco. I know a lot of students were concerned and curious about that. So our next question is for Mr. Ate, and is MCPS going to stop using paper or will the paper assignments remain?
That's a great question, and one that my students, my own children have asked me also. So during COVID, we were forced to quickly adapt to using less paper, obviously. We've actually experienced a paper shortage also since then, as the paper factories switched their operations from manufacturing paper to manufacturing cardboard for shipping. So we expect that we will continue using less paper because this habit has been forced into us at this point because we've been working with COVID for so long. And this is really a great example of how some of the dramatic changes that we'll need to make moving forward, an example of how long it takes people really to transition to those new habits, but that are going to be so critical in making our climate action successful. But remember, since all students learn differently, and there's times that we have to use paper, it's likely we will continue to use some paper, but definitely less. Of course, students and staff are definitely encouraged to continue using innovations like double-sided printing, using scrap paper, and taking notes on electronic devices when appropriate. We also reached out to our colleagues in materials management for some data to share with you. So in the fall of 2021, in comparison to the fall of 2019, MCPS experienced a 45% reduction in the use of paper materials from our print shop and from materials in the copy machines. That's a gigantic habit change that we've already been able to implement. So I'm so proud of our staff and students for doing that. Additionally, central offices and administrative offices have reduced their use of paper and printed materials and switched more to interactive and electronic newsletters.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ate. It's really cool to know that's happening. And this next question is for you again. And how close are we to being entirely green energy? Is that a goal we're currently working towards?
So MCPS has been and will continue to steadily increase our clean energy purchases. We have a website where you can watch our progress, and we'll put that down in the chat. But in a nutshell, it shows that we began our renewable energy purchases in 2005, and we were only purchasing 5% of our consumption at that point. In 2020, we were up to 38%. And note that we're purchasing more than double of what we're actually required by law to purchase. Now, with the recent market conditions, we have seen a dramatic rise in the price and cost of energy and clean energy. And it's definitely, even on a regular day, much more expensive than conventional energy. Some of the green energy that we purchase in the county is actually produced elsewhere in the country, meaning that our local community doesn't really benefit from the environmental protections that clean energy offers. So we are closely examining our facilities' energy use and directing our investments also, in addition to clean energy purchases, into using that money to identify improvements we can make that actually reduce our energy consumption with the goal of benefiting everyone in the county long-term.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ate. I really appreciate that. And so this next question is for Mr. Douglas. So will existing school bus routes possibly be optimized in conjunction with the initiative? I hope students like me can walk to our bus stops rather than have parents drive us to the nearest bus stops 4 miles away from home.
I'm going to allow Mr. Beasley to answer that question. I think he's closer to that issue than I am.
Thank you very much. Part of process improvement in transportation is to optimize the bus routes. Every year we go through this process as new roads open up, new subdivisions are created, and new schools open up. The electric buses add a new dimension to it, which is very good because it forces us to optimize the range of the bus and not to bring the bus back to be charged if we don't have to, but also to optimize the routes that the bus travel, make sure that they're safe for the students to walk to, and to get the most that we can out of the bus. Unfortunately, if we're talking about a 4 miles to a bus stop, I'm thinking that that's a magnet bus stop or a special schools bus stop. And unfortunately, those routes are set up in such a way that they collect students on and along at centralized stops. But the neighborhood bus stops, those are always optimized and will continue to be optimized and will be challenged with the electric buses to maximize the use.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. Our final question, I believe, for tonight will be to Ms. Jenkins. How will MCPS encourage students to be environmentally friendly even when they are not in school or they have already graduated?
All right, let's talk about the graduation piece to start out with. Okay, the whole idea and whole focus and vision of the pre-K through 12 environmental literacy curriculum is that our students will graduate environmentally literate, right? So they have the knowledge and the experiences with the environment that will carry them into the future. They know why the environment is important to them and how to take care of it, and hopefully want to take care of it, right? That's a whole big piece. And we hope that that connection that everybody is making over those years will propel good environmental decisions in the future, right? Things that are good for the planet. And we also have summertime and, away from home. We also believe that the sustainability practices that we use here in MCPS become habits to each one of us. So wherever we are, we will be looking for a place to recycle our plastic or paper. We will be turning off lights when we see them on and there's nobody in a room. We will be turning off the water when brushing your teeth, using reusable water bottles and not those single-use plastics. So the idea is the habits that we are trying to put into place in MCPS now for students and getting them used to it. And that's not students just, that's staff as well, right? The things that are going to help, that those practices will become habits. There's a lot of research that says if a new practice is repeated for 8 weeks, that it'll become a habit. And these are the good habits we need, of course, to protect the earth. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Yeah.
So it has been quite an informative night, and I'd like to thank my fellow student facilitators, the MCPS staff, and our guest panelists who joined us this evening.
If you'd like to rewatch this program, it will be available to you on the MCPS TV YouTube channel.
This is also a reminder to all middle and high school students that this was a learning and advocacy experience. Please scan the QR code on the screen or go to the bit.ly link to complete your SSL form to earn your SSL hours. It must be completed by 9:30 p.m. tonight. Again, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful night.